bridge collapsed. The mountain road washed out. All the signs are obscured by fog. Your only directions are detours. Eventually it dawns on you. Sometimes you need to get lost to discover where you're supposed to be. Welcome to Merlin's Barn.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Merlin's Barn, broadcasting to you from Fort Blanket, south of the Yukon. Look, I did not screw it up this time.
That's great. All right.
For our listeners, I usually I go through like 3 or 4 times, and there's usually swearing in between as I find some new and interesting way to screw up our intro. All right, and tonight we're coming to you live from the barn office, interviewing Hot Todd Lincoln, who is flying in from where?
Hell, Michigan.
And how is this flight going? I say with great trepidation and concern.
Sadly, it's not good. Apparently his DC-7 with the Jolly Voyager Travel Club has been grounded for
indefinitely.
An antique.
I'm just concerned about flying with the Jolly Voyager Travel Club. It just sounds like everybody has a whiskey or something like that, including the pilot, who's got like 2 highballs.
I think after all the previous problems, he was trying for one of these NetJets private airline sort of thing, and I guess it's still not quite working out.
Support local. All right, to give you some context, Hot Todd, who goes under Hot Todd Lincoln, is a strongman, and Matt's going to.
Yep,
he's a fellow we know, and we at some point would really like to interview, but his flights are always delayed or canceled and stuff. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, so genuinely, Hot Todd Lincoln. He is a sideshow performer, an old-fashioned, old-time strongman, also a novelist, photographer, and a wedding officiant. And he is kind of local to us in Baltimore when he's not jetting all over the country with the World Oddities Expo.
And getting stuck in delays because American planes are just... Are they this bad around the rest of the world, or is it just us?
No, it's everywhere.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, my experience in the rest of the world is, one airport in Ireland, Heathrow, which I didn't think was that bad, and Charles de Gaulle, which is the 10th level of Dante's Inferno.
That might be one of the worst airports. It's renowned for losing your luggage in that one.
It's just renowned for losing people.
They have to have hall monitors direct you. There's literally just... the one time I flew through there was literally airport employees at the intersections helping direct people because the airport is so confusing.
I felt they were just making it worse because we'd get to we'd get to what we thought was our gate where we'd been directed, and some guy with a white jacket would pop up, and I swear he was giggling, and yank the sign down and disappear. And then all of a sudden you'd have this whole gaggle of people trying to find somebody to talk to, and we'd be redirected somewhere else. It was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare.
Not a Tom and Jerry cartoon you were in?
It felt like a combination of that and some evil Monty Python or something like that. Maybe something from Time Bandits. Anybody who's seen that would just get it, I think.
So, on a personal note, I'm actually hoping to see Hot Todd at the World Oddities Expo in Dulles in a few weeks. I say that even though you're not going to hear this episode for several months, so it will have been several months ago in a few weeks that I'm hoping to see Hot Todd.
Today is the tomorrow you worried about yesterday.
Exactly.
Think about that one for a little bit, folks. Yes. Stop thinking about it. It's not good for you.
So now we have you thoroughly confused.
Yes.
Back to tonight's topic.
Tonight's topic, we're welcoming you to episode or section 4 or part 4 of the Alaska trip, where we actually see and touch the Alaska Highway. Yes, folks, all of those 3 episodes leading up to this have gotten us to the Alaska Highway.
You mean the series on the Alaska Highway actually leads to the Alaska Highway?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
I'm so excited.
Yeah, I've heard frustration at this point going, is there an Alaska Highway involved in this? Yes, at some point there is, but we did have to get to it. And so what I want to start with tonight is we had like a whole group of awesome people on this trip. And if you get the book starts off with a section about all the Jeep teams. So what we're going to do is we're going to read off the Jeep teams and their specifics, and then there's going to be a quiz. And if you do not do well on the quiz, we will call your parents, and they will be disappointed in you. All right? So listen and memorize everybody so the rest of the trip makes sense to you. I know that's not going to happen. I can't remember anybody's name for the life of me. So we're going to go through and read these, talk a little bit about them, and we will then jump on to the first part of the journey and whatever I can clearly remember from it. I tried to check my notes again this evening before jumping on. So I'm starting this, aren't I?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's to give some context again, to jump back a little bit. If you heard one of the earlier episodes or way back to the first one on the Alaska trip, the idea was come up with in 2015, I think. Then 2016, they put together the website, and basically we just ended up with this group of people that just ended up on the trip for different reasons. Somebody happened to stumble into somebody. Somebody happened to send an email in because they'd heard about it. There was no like real applying to it. There was no like you're the chosen one or anything like that. But we ended up with just the coolest group of down-to-earth people that I remember partway through the trip, we were after some day where things had broken, we're all sitting around having a beer in the evening, and the subject was brought up that, wow, everybody just gets along. There was like the only time politics came up was when we discussed that nobody had discussed politics in like the entire time we'd been together. And for most of us, for a good percentage of us, we had just met at the beginning of that trip. But everybody just had a similar interest. Well, let's just drive these old Jeeps and get up the Alaska Highway and enjoy this insane journey that we did not actually predict that we'd ever be on. So to start off with, we have Andreas and I think it's Lewis, I think it's Lewis, his son Lewis. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing those. And they were driving a 1963 Willys truck. Andreas, who in 2017 ran industrial advisory services in New York, joined us with his son and their friends Dario and Marcelo. Andreas drove his recently finished 1963 truck with an Overland diesel Kubota engine conversion. These things didn't originally have diesels in them. On the journey, Dario and Marcelo drove Andreas' chase truck and trailer, and even though they weren't official participants, they really were participants by the time we were done. They became part of the crew. The Kubota truck fared really well, needing just a few minor adjustments during the journey, and made the whole trip on its own four wheels, unlike a lot of other vehicles.
All right. And Nicole in her first ever speaking role.
Yay!
All right. Also joining Merlin on his trip was Bill. Bill had a 1965 CJ5 dually. Bill drove from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where he ran a Lime Street Carriage.
That's the name of his shop, Lime Street Carriage.
Lime Street Carriage. A vintage Jeep dealer and restoration shop. Bill has taken Jeeps all over the country in the last 2 decades, from Moab to Maine and even Hawaii, if rental Jeeps count. Bill holds a CDL license and he loves long-distance driving. So when the conversation came up about visiting his 50th state, Alaska, it was only natural to drive to it in an old Jeep. Bill built a dually CJ5 with a Kubota engine and Overland Drive diesel kit and matching custom teardrop trailer for this adventure. As like all of us, he was finishing this up just days before leaving for the trip.
I'll throw in for there. I think this was an excavator or a trenching Jeep. So if you've seen dually pickup trucks, it had a dually rear on it. And then he thought it would be really cool if he made a teardrop vintage style trailer with a dually axle on it as well. And as he was trying to haul that up a mountainside with the little Kubota diesel in his Jeep, he did make a comment at one point about regretting his decision to make the really cool dually camper.
Extra couple 100 pounds unnecessary.
Oh my God, yeah. And he literally was like so many of us. I think the night before he left was when he finished it. And then he just got in and started driving. And I think there was one stint where he went 25 hours straight without stopping. When he had like a realization 25 hours in of, oh, I haven't slept. I should probably stop and sleep at some point.
You're pulling a camper with you.
Yes, yeah. Got a house.
All right. The next team is Dave and Ann. and a 1956 Willys DJ3A. Dave was the author of the widely read eWillies.com website, and Ann is his ever-alert wife/chief cat herder. Dave has long history in Jeeps dating back to his parents being charter members of the Wandering Willys Jeep Club in California. In the early 1980s, Dave drove the family 1962 CJ5, and from there went on to build a custom flat fender for Jeeping and racing. After a long period of time without a Jeep, Dave bought a project in 2007 and began to build another flat fender Jeep. His searches for parts led him to found eWillies.com. Dave and Ann bought 2 DJ3A Jeeps, combining them together into one Patterson for the trip. Dave is also the author of 3 books, including one on Western mining and one on the lost amber panels of Königsberg, which could probably be a podcast episode in itself.
I saw that. I was like, that one's weird. We should I should add that to the list of things we might want to cover.
Maybe we can talk to Dave about it.
Yeah. Well, it's easy enough. He's we've definitely got access to an expert.
We don't have to do the research. We can just make a phone call.
You're right. Well,
Amber
that'd be.
panels?
They were literally these. It was this room, I believe, in a palace in Königsberg that had these massive panels that were carved out of amber.
Oh,
And they were, I believe, the Germans grabbed them during World War II, like removed them from the room, and there is no clue where they went.
oh,
So it's one of those things that like could show up somewhere in Russia, might be buried in a salt mine in Germany somewhere. Lord only knows. I haven't read the book, so I should, because Dave's an awesome author, and he actually edited the book that I did on this trip. All right.
I mean, there was, just a real quick aside to that.
Yeah,
and
no,
get
go
back
for
on
it.
topic. Really, really recently, one of the pieces of art that was stolen during World War II showed back up in South America in a real estate listing. It was hanging on a wall, and
I saw about
redfin.com
that.
or whatever.
Yeah.
They're like, wait a minute, that is.
Yeah, and it had just been there. I saw an article on that. It's just like somebody looked at it and went, wait a sec, isn't that the thing that went missing and such and such?
Yeah, and that was just, a couple months ago?
Didn't happen to be in Argentina, did it?
I believe it was.
Where everything German went after the war?
So the amber panels might turn up just like hanging in somebody's living room.
There's probably a living room in Argentina somewhere. Somebody's sitting there going, these are so nice. I should not sell my house after what happened with that painting.
Anyway.
Great grandpa brought them back from the war. He said they were a gift. No.
So we'll have to talk to Dave about those sometime.
Yeah. Speaking of South America, we've got Hugo and Fernando. They were driving a 2017 Jeep Wrangler JKU, black one like mine. Hugo Fidel lives in Brazil. He joined us with his son Fernando, who lived at the time in Florida. And since then, when I moved into the barn here, got really excited about this concept of barns and barn dominiums and decided it was really an American thing. And I kept saying, no, this is not normal. And then he found a partially finished barn dominium being built out of an old barn in back somewhere in rural Georgia, and moved himself and his car collection there. Last I knew, had been happily adopted by this small town in Georgia. It has finished the building. They're awesome. Hugo, whose 84th birthday we celebrated in Whitehorse, first drove the Alaska Highway in 1955. He and 2 fellow Boy Scouts drove a CJ3B from Brazil to Niagara to Niagara for a Boy Scout jamboree, and then to Alaska before returning to Brazil on an adventure they called Operation Pineapple. Basically, one of them worked for a Willys dealership, one of them worked for the Willys factory in Brazil, and I think another one worked for like a battery company. And they heard about this Scout Jamboree, and they were like, well, we want to go. And then they got sponsors and got a Jeep, and they went to the Jamboree. When they ran out of money, they went down to New York City, and Hugo got them on a game show. And they won everything.
awesome.
And then they sold everything so that they could fund the rest of their trip. And they went to Toledo, where the Willys plant in Toledo took apart their Jeep and found out, I think, that it was better built than the ones made in the U.S. And in Hugo's book, there's an amazing book, which I'll bring up in one of the later another episode when I can remember what it's called. about his trip because he took hundreds of photos. So he wrote a book on his trip that came out after we did this trip. And he has choice words about Toledo and it not being a place to go, even in the 1950s.
Oh,
Yes. And then they went up the Alaska Highway, which is how they ended up with us. Because, let's see, go back on this. Their trip lasted a year, covered 72,000 kilometers. The trip made a huge impact on Hugo, leading him to launch a four-wheel drive company in Brazil. Hugo and Fernando ended up on the trip out of pure synchronicity. A fellow in Whitehorse, which is the capital of the Yukon, found an old Alaska Highway Lodge logbook prior to our trip, a couple years prior, I think. One of the pages in the logbook had a cartoon of a little Jeep driving across the top of the page with Brazil on one side and Alaska on the other side. And it was signed by Hugo and his friends. So this guy started searching, and he and I think he got involved with Dave Eilers, and they tracked down Hugo. Around the time they're looking for him, Hugo finds out about this Alaska arrest trip and talks with his son, and decide they would go. And then they were supplied with a Jeep by one of the Jeep corporations. Hugo regularly found the new Jeep nice but too comfortable and would ask to ride with one of us in our vintage Jeeps, which was really fun. And there'll be a lot more about him as we go along.
all right.
So, who's next?
Nicole.
Yes. All right. Also joining him was Jim and Kevin in their 1947 Willys CJ2A. Jim was lonely on the trip, so he abducted a hitchhiker and forced him to stick with the Jeep for 2 weeks. Wait, no. Jim and Kevin came from the Midwest and are longtime buddies who head to the mountains annually for a camping trip. The dynamic duo traveled in Jim's 1947 CJ2A. Before Jim went off to college in 1980, his father bought him the CJ2A for $200. He couldn't believe it at first, especially when his father brought it home. It was in poor shape, and he learned a lot from it. 2 years later, after bouts of sporadic building, he got it back on the road. Soon it became his primary transportation and remained that way for years. His CJ2A sports many upgrades, such as a Buick V6 engine, 12-volt electrical system, overdrive, and more. Jim and Kevin are highly entertaining, with Jim's grumpy yet hilarious commentary and Kevin's scathing retorts. They are two of the best people with which whom to camp.
Basically, if you've seen the Grumpy Old Men movies, that's what was going on. That's what was going on in that Jeep for the entire trip.
Jim and Kevin, two grumpy old men.
Yeah, it was absolutely hilarious, especially when Jim would get hungry, because then everything got shut down, and Kevin would have running commentary as he would set up a smorgasbord to make sure Jim didn't eat somebody.
All right. Our next team is Joe and Emily in a 1953 Willys CJ3B. Joe is a master mechanic and fabricator. Joe was joined on a trip by his girlfriend Emily, who is a photographer. At the time, they lived near Winfield, Maryland. For Emily, this was her first camping trip, really roughing it. No 24-foot RV this time. Despite attacks of killer mosquitoes, extreme cold, heat, rain, and high winds in an open Jeep, Emily toughed it out. When he was 14, Joe helped a neighbor restore a 1970s Nova. That hooked him on old cars. Joe was 18 when he bought his first Jeep, a 1985 CJ7. On the Alaska Rush trip, Joe drove his 1953 Willys CJ3B. When he first bought it, the CJ3B was as stock as they come. But Joe built a custom frame, laid out a modern drivetrain, and used international axles. The 3B has a Buick V6 with a 5-speed transmission and can go quite fast or crawl rocks. When Joe first finished it, he immediately drove cross-country and back.
He literally did. He finished the thing and was like, I feel like going west, and just drove to California.
Okay.
Yeah. It was just, I remember getting pictures of him. He's like, oh, I'm out in the Nevada desert right now. Just beautiful pictures of the Jeep with like the perfect night sky because he'd just be sleeping underneath the Jeep and stuff like
Kind of
that.
impressed because like I make it like as far as like Indiana. I want to turn around and go home. I'm like, I'm tired of this.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, he
maybe
did.
It's Indiana, but
I mean, it's that. But he did the Alaska trip, and then after the Alaska trip, he went and did, I think it was Easter Jeep Safari out in, I think that's out in Moab, Utah. And he drove out there, and I remember somebody was running a live video that I got a note from him going, watch this. And it might have been Warren Winch Company or something, and they're going around the parking lot, and they see the tag, Maryland, and he happened to be standing by the Jeeps. They get chatting with him, and everybody has towed those Jeeps there, and they get chatting with him. He says, "Oh yeah, I drove it here." They're like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, I woke up and drove it here." "Well, where are you sleeping?" Probably in the Jeep." "What?" It's just, he eventually got fed up and got a hotel room and ended up hanging out with like two of my like video heroes, Freiberger and Payway. Freiberger did a show called um, uh, shoot, I'm muttering, Roadkill on Motor Trend, which is a great thing where they would just like throw a dart at a board, buy a cheap car wherever that dart had landed, and try and make it back to California. And Payway is just sort of this Jeep creature who is the Jeep god, basically. And they're both really laid-back guys, and Joe's staying at this hotel, and he goes downstairs, and Freiberger and Payway, who also happen to be running a lot of the Easter Jeep Safari, are sitting at the bar. And Joe walks down, and Freiberger turns around and goes, "Oh, you're the one with that CJ3B." And a CJ3B is an early 50s Jeep. And Joe goes, "Yeah." And I think it was Payway turns around, looks at me, and says, "You're the one we actually want to hang out with." And he tells me, I'm like, I am so jealous. I've talked with Payway before, but that's it. I mean, he got to hang out with him basically for the rest of the trip because they're like, "You're cool. We don't really care about the rest of the stuff that showed up here." Let's see. Oh, it's my turn now. Let's see. Marty and Don. And sorry for the pages rustling. Do I need this page right here? I guess I do. Marty and Don, 46 Willys CJ2A, sort of. This was like, Marty drove his heavily modified 1946 CJ2A with a longtime friend and fabricator, Don. Marty came from the Pacific Northwest. Wheeling and jeeping are a family affair for Marty, his wife, and their two children. Marty's Jeep was built for a wide array of requirements: safe for kids, capable of racing, safe for difficult trail running, and dependable enough for highway use. To tackle the project, he asked his friend Don to construct it. Don owns the shop American Machine and Fabrication in Vancouver, Washington. There, Don builds custom off-road rigs with extreme precision and artistry. Don can fix or fabricate almost anything, and his skill showed up on the trip numerous times. One of the other drivers, Rob, commented, quote, "You also could never tell him, 'Hey, that's my Jeep, don't touch it,' because by the time you got out of your Jeep, not that any of us felt the need to, Don was already half done fixing whatever your problem was. We quickly named him MacGyver from the old TV series. MacGyver also had an obsession with beer koozies, and if you happened to be wandering around with a beer without one of those little foam koozies on it, he would come up, stare at you, shake his head solemnly, disappear back to his trailer, and come back with a beer koozie and stick your beer in it. I never totally got it, but your beer had to be in a beer koozie for you to be civilized."
okay.
All right.
I didn't realize civilization was supported by beer koozies.
I didn't either. I just get stacks of them from like sponsors and stuff and never know what to do with them because other than on this trip with Don, I've never seen a need for one.
All right. We'll reintroduce Rob, Ron, and Diana and their 48 Willys CJ2A. Rob is from Spanaway, Washington, and ended up trading off co-pilots in Fairbanks. Ron, another longtime Jeeper, joined Rob for the ride up the Alaska Highway, but flew home from Fairbanks. Meanwhile, Rob's wife, Diana, also a Jeeper, joined him for the drive journey home.
Sorry.
Rob grew up in his family's 1963 CJ3B which he still has, although it is stored in his garage in pieces. In 1978, he purchased his first car, the 1948 CJ2A, which he drove on the trip. Highly customized, the CJ2A has everything from an old Fire Buick V6 to a worn overdrive in it. Rob is a lifelong member of the Pacific Northwest Four-Wheel Drive Association and served the club in a variety of positions. He and Diane belong to 3 Jeep clubs. Diane herself has been into Jeeps for 20 plus years and hosts an all-girls Jeep run the first weekend of every October. Ron grew up in Jeeps as well, wheeling with his parents since he was 4 years old. He has a 1942 GPW, a CJ5, and Cherokees. Ron hadn't been behind the wheel of a Flat E for quite a few years, but driving the CJ2A on the Alaska Highway felt comfortable, like an old shoe he hadn't worn in a while.
All right. There will also be a quiz on like all the weird little Jeep things that I apologize. Maybe I should have just edited all that stuff out. But we're almost at the end. So hold on for like another 2 minutes. Russ and Cowboy, 1951 Willys Jeepster. Russ and Cowboy, otherwise known as Tom, joined us from Paris, Illinois. Cowboy drove his truck and car trailer, hauling Russ's Jeepster to Dawson Creek. In Paris, Russ runs a machine shop, and Cowboy, a retired letter carrier of 33 years, has a small ranch. Russ's first experience with Jeeps was when he was 4 years old. His father had a 42 Ford GPW, that's a World War II Jeep, that he purchased at an auction and used for groundskeeping at the local schools. Russ bought his first Jeep in '86, and it was a 49 CJ2A that he used for everything from hauling wood to outfitting with a flying saucer costume for Halloween, which is an awesome photograph I've seen. Russ has owned a wide array of Jeeps since then, from Willys trucks to Cherokees. Cowboy is another longtime Jeep enthusiast, the 8th of 10 children. He would beg, borrow, or steal his brother's 47 2A to bounce around roads south of Paris, Illinois. Cowboy says, quote, "The freedom of that CJ2A was as addictive as black tar heroin to a spider monkey," unquote. Cowboy came up with a lot of sayings that we'd sit there and try and translate, basically. His first Jeep was a 94 YJ that he then restored a 47 2A and collected many more. Cowboy has never sold a Jeep. Literally, has never sold a Jeep. I believe there's a line of them by his house. In his own words, Russ says that they ended up on the trip this way. He said, "A friend sent me the link for Alaska Rust that was on Kaiser Willys. I looked at it several times a week till the website read, 'Participation closed.' At that point, I told myself, now you do not have to worry about wanting to go because you can't. Well, being a somewhat faithful reader of E. Willys, a post caught my eye, Jeepster wanted. I thought to myself, yeah, I could sell it. But I emailed the Alaska Rust folks anyway. I opened up the response, surprised with the opportunity to travel with the Alaska Rust crew. It had to be a sign, so I accepted the offer. It turned out to be the best thing I've ever done in my Jeeping career." So he ended up coming in a bright yellow Jeepster that we nicknamed Rubber Duck.
Rubber duck.
Rubber Duck, yep.
All right.
Last ones.
Want me to take the last one?
Go for it.
And the final team, Scott, Rick, and Bob, in a 1953 Willys wagon. This terrific trio set out from Ohio to meet the rest of us at Dawson Creek, British Columbia. The wagon belonged to Scott, who is a lifelong Jeep guy. Scott is an attorney and an Army veteran who took an organizational role in pulling the trip together. Scott did everything he could to properly prepare for the journey, including having the engine rebuilt. Unfortunately, the rebuilder had the competence and the attention to detail of a paralytic sea cucumber. The result was that Scott and his crew fought for every inch of their journey. Team member Bob has been a lifelong Jeep lover and runs Jeep shows in the Midwest for years. For Bob, it started when he was 8 years old, when his father took him to a Jeep race in Lisbon, Ohio. Bob now owns a CJ3B and is currently restoring a Jeepster. Team member Rick is the man at the helm of Old Jeep Carbs LLC and brought decades of Willys experience with him. Rick, who flew Hueys in Vietnam, has owned a wide array of flat fender Jeeps. He currently has a 1947 CJ2A.
All right, so there'll be a quiz on all of that in 20 minutes. Once again, your parents will be informed if you do not pass with flying colors. and you'll also have to be able to describe and discuss all the different variations of Jeeps as well. Maybe I should put at the beginning of this episode, like jump back and just put a little bit. By the way, if you want to skip all the Jeep stuff, or like hearing about Jeeps, or too many Jeeps, or something like that, forward to the 30-minute mark. We're 30 minutes in. So, hope the treadmill ride is going well. That's the people that we met on the morning after we got in. What was it, like 1:30 in the morning or something like that? We literally wandered downstairs, I think around 7 in the morning, and it was a nice hotel because I rate hotels off of basically, do they have breakfast and do they have a waffle maker? If your hotel has a waffle maker and is clean and has good coffee, then I'm just a happy camper. So we wandered downstairs. They had waffle makers. The world was good. I knew a handful of people there, so I knew like Joe, I knew Bill, I knew Dave Eilers and his wife. Pretty much everybody else there, almost everybody else there was new to me. And my ex was just sort of staring at everybody who was absolutely new to her, just like, oh God, what have I gotten into? And I
I
think
understand that feeling.
yeah, and it was funny by midday. There's photos in the book of her just like plotting things with some of the guys, like the characters, the grumpy old men in the Jeep, who really weren't that old, Kevin and Jim. Jim and Brittany would just come up with, you would just see them plotting things together. Could never totally figure out what was going on, but they were intent in conversation and something was going to happen. So we got to meet everybody. We found out that, I think it was that morning, we found out that the Jeep that we had rescued our friend Rick from up in Estevan, Canada, an episode or two ago, I think like 2 episodes ago now, was absolutely dead, and unfortunately actually had a bunch of stuff that we were supposed to have still, and also had the credit card for the trip.
Oh,
Yeah, because we had like we had sponsorship money, and then we had a credit card to pay for everything, and that was heading back from Estevan, Canada to Ohio. So we found out. So I think they fixed that Jeep every single night as they drove. And they finally just reached a point where it was just they couldn't just keep fixing it to make it to the rest of the way. And I constantly feel bad for like Bob, because Bob and Scott actually run a show, a Willys Jeep show in Ohio, and this is always just rubbed against Bob, because this was like the dream trip, and then they had to watch online as we went and did the rest of the trip. Yeah, so we felt bad. So the first day, I think it was like the first day I hadn't been driving in a while. I think this was a Saturday. And basically it turned into had breakfast, got to know people. Then how do we figure out what the hell's wrong with Mortimer because of that overheating issue we were having in Glacier National Park. So we started working on him, getting other people's ideas on what might be wrong with him. At one point, Ann and Dave managed to actually cat herd all of us into one location, which wasn't easy. And there's a big sign for the beginning of the Alaska Highway in Dawson Creek. And so we have this beautiful photograph of all the Jeeps and all of us lined up under the sign, except for Joe's girlfriend, Emily, who slept through it largely because we found out they'd basically stayed in a crack hotel the night before they got there, and had gotten no sleep because I think every 45 minutes he'd woken up to check and see if somebody was going through his Jeep. Aww. Yeah, so it's like we'd gotten no sleep because we'd just been driving nonstop. They'd gotten a hotel that was so bad they were afraid to sleep in it. Yeah. And the rest of the crew a lot of the rest of the crew had actually gotten to Dawson Creek a bit early. Some of them a day or so early, but they could not get a hotel room a day or so early, so there was this cluster of Jeeps living in the hotel parking lot with guys living in them until the hotel would actually let them have their rooms. So,
fun.
Yeah. So we ended up testing out different things on Mortimer. By the end of the day, I think like all the guys were standing around Mortimer doing things to him. Like we put a thermostat on him that were like, the guys were like, hey, we're going to change this hose out. We're going to burp this. We're going to drill this. We're going to empty that. And Most of the guys standing there as well with a beer in, of course, a beer cozy, because it has to be for you to be civilized. And I remember Brittany standing there going, "How many guys does it take to fix a radiator?" And I'm like, "Apparently 11." So we got our plans together for the if I've got it right, I think it was the Sunday. And the Sunday morning, we lined up the vehicles outside the hotel. I still remember just sort of the chaos. Oh, and the one other fun thing from the Saturday was the Mounties found us. So we had this whole group of Mounties show up in the parking lot just at the hotel, just staring at the row of Jeeps as we're prepping them. And so there ended up being, like with the peace officer, more patch trading and signing of things. And I think they all wandered off with T-shirts as well.
Cool.
Yeah, so we constantly had like good experiences with like any officials in Canada. It was always a pleasant experience. And so Sunday morning we got the vehicles lined up. We've got I think it was Dave in their DJ, which stands for delivery Jeep. It's just a 2-wheel drive old style Jeep, and he was in the lead. His wife was following in their new Jeep, which was their tow vehicle. She was further back. I think I was like a vehicle or so behind him. We had all the vehicles that were original Jeeps with original engines and everything in front to set the pace. So we had the delivery Jeep. We had Mortimer, who's the battered World War II Jeep. We had the we had the Jeepster, Rubber Duck, and we headed out from Dawson Creek and started to head up the Alaska Highway. The highway was built in '42, so this was the 75th anniversary of the Alaska Highway. And where they originally built the highway versus where it is now has changed over the years. I mean, you can drive along some areas and see the old highway off to your left or right going out through the woods. There's some areas where it's massively moved. But there's also just these neat spots you can find and go and visit. And one of the neatest things not too far from the beginning of the Alaska Highway is something called the Kiskatinaw Bridge. And this is a bridge across a massive gorge, but it's not a straight bridge. It is a curved bridge, and it's a wooden bridge. So all of the boards in this thing, as it goes around this curve across this gorge, all of them curve. I have no idea how they did this, how they cut it, whether they steamed them or something. So we took a diversion and pulled over there. Got photographs and drone footage and stuff like that. And it was a little bit weird for those of us who had started in Maryland, because we were used to just bombing along and not stopping for anything. And all of a sudden we're just doing this leisurely sort of bopping along type thing. So we took that. That was good. And the vehicles were doing okay at that point. We get back out, we start heading up the Alaska Highway, and I'm just sort of pushing Mortimer and hoping. And Dave is sort of setting a pace of about 50 miles per hour in his delivery Jeep. So we're going along, and I'm watching Mortimer's getting up to like 220. His oil pressure's bouncing around a little bit. But we just sort of keep pushing. And at one point, this really souped-up modern Jeep comes down the highway. And the Alaska Highway, when we say Alaska Highway, 90% of the time it's 2 lanes. So it's a highway. It's just not a huge one. So we're bopping along, and this massively built-up 4-door Jeep comes down the opposite direction. We see it in our rearview mirrors do a U-ey. And then it comes up, passes us, and takes a lead, and jumps in front, passes all of us, and jumps in front of Dave, and happily leads us into a Tim Hortons parking lot several miles down the road,
Nice.
to which we know Merlin is totally ecstatic. However, when we pull into the Tim Hortons, it is noted that Mortimer is leaving a 2 to 3 inch wide trail of oil into the parking lot because, hey, we haven't had enough things go wrong. And one of the guys points that out, and I'm looking down. My foot is covered in oil. There's a plate in the floor of these old Jeeps that covers up the transmission, and you could stick your finger down and wipe up oil that was coming up around that plate. So we had several of the guys had like I think it was the Pacific Northwest Four-Wheel Drive Club had donated these emergency like hazmat cleanup kits because when I stopped him, there's just oil dripping massively off of everything underneath the vehicle. So we've got this hazmat kit. I go to open up the transmission to check whatever's going on in there. I go to where the fill point is, which is up towards the top, which makes sense. I open it and oil, like almost boiling oil, shoots out of it, which is a little bit confusing because that's the fill hole. The oil is supposed to be below the fill hole.
Oh.
Yeah, and so we got a bucket under that, and it shot oil out for a little bit before it settled down. And what we slowly figured out was I realized at one point when we were overhauling the Jeep for the trip, I had opened up the transmission to check it. And I believe somebody in my shop decided that was probably the best way to fill the transmission was, let's fill it and bolt it up from Merlin. That's not how you fill a transmission, because that means they had filled the transmission 2 inches above the actual fill level.
Oh.
So this poor thing was just all these gears churning in this pressurized, overfilled mass, overheating. So I think we destroyed part of a parking lot. I celebrated by going into the Tim Hortons and encountering a large line and coming out to see our row of vehicles slowly leaving without me. But at that point we had coffee, so we were able to catch up. And we went from there to Rainier's place to drop off one or two of I think we dropped off at least one of the chase trucks and trailers there. Admired his completely spotless garage, which was absolutely gorgeous. And then after about a half-hour break there, headed back out to the highway. And we started rolling up the highway, and we made it, I don't know if we made it another hour or so. And Mortimer all of a sudden lost all oil pressure. I mean, it was just, we're going up a hill and all of a sudden I looked and it was like 40, 40, 40, 0.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It's just like, wow, define bad. Having no oil pressure, that's bad. So we immediately pulled over. At that point, the new Jeep, which we'd been towing Mortimer with, the new Jeep was, we'll get really confusing here, the new Jeep was on the trailer that the Rubber Duck, the yellow Jeepster, had been brought west on. So the new Jeep was being towed by Cowboy on a trailer. And Rubber Duck seemed to know this because basically all the vehicles with original engines went down one after the other like dominoes.
Oh, wow.
I pulled over Mortimer, because we were having the oil pressure issue. Somebody pulled over and drove me up to get the new Jeep off the trailer. As we're driving up, Rubber Duck is stopped by the side of the road. And this happened enough that every now and then you'd hear on the radio Joe just shouting, "Rubber Duck down," again. And then as I drive back down to hitch up Mortimer to the new Jeep so I can just tow him until we get to our campground that evening, I see that Dave's vintage Jeep Patterson has also gone down.
Oh.
Rubber Duck, I don't know if Rubber Duck, we weren't sure what happened. Patterson had an electrical problem. So we just we accepted that. And I mean, I had to continue to get to the point where I was just like, I'm disappointed I'm not driving my 1942 Jeep. On the other hand, I'm still driving a Jeep, and I'm on the Alaska Highway on an adventure with a bunch of really cool people. So I had to keep getting that through to my head. I'd be like disappointed because Mortimer would break again, and then I'd be sitting there going, I'm on the freaking Alaska Highway. This is really, really cool. People don't get to do this. So we got everything. We got Rubber Duck on his trailer. We got Mortimer hitched up to Junior. We got Patterson hitched up behind Dave and Ann's Grand Cherokee. We kept heading up the highway, and I'm sure I'm missing some other little disaster in there. I can't remember totally for sure. But we eventually made it to Fort Nelson, British Columbia. And I'm going to stop and look up something in the book to make sure I get a name right because this was really important. Give me 1 second.
Insert intermission music here.
Yeah, insert intermission music. It's Pink Mountain. Yeah, I just want to find the name of one company. Oh, come on. How did I flip by it? Oh, Dalex, okay. Dalex Auto, that was it. So there's a company in Fort Nelson, British Columbia, which is called Dalex Auto. And Dalex basically set up they set up a welcome to town party for us.
Oh, nice.
So when we rolled into Fort Nelson, we took all the Jeeps over to Dalex Auto, lined them all up there. All the locals knew that this was happening. So there were people coming from all over the area just to see the Jeeps and talk with us and sit in the Jeeps. And they had like stacks of pizzas, stacks of subs. There was like a special cake made for us.
Oh, that's cool.
And that was the Pennies, Todd and his wife. They're just awesome people. I mean, even when COVID hit, I remember posting on Facebook one day that I desperately wanted Tim Hortons coffee because I hadn't had any in a long time. And I get a note from Todd, who I hadn't seen since 2017, that just says, "What's your address, Merlin?" And I said to him, I sent him a note going, "Dude, you do not want to ship Tim Hortons from Fort Nelson." And I just get back, "What's your address?" And a week later, a gigantic container of Tim Hortons coffee showed up on my porch.
Nice.
So later in COVID, I made it a mission to go up to Gettysburg and get 2 touristy Gettysburg souvenir coffee mugs, and sent them up to him and his wife. And his comment was, he said he'd be drinking his coffee at the counter in his shop, and people would be coming up going, "When did you go to Gettysburg?" So they said we had an awesome time at their place. We tinkered with Rubber Duck, and I think we got Rubber Duck, the Jeepster, running again. I don't know if Patterson ever ran for that long for the rest of the trip. I think they decided that the Jeep Cherokee was safer and more enjoyable to drive long distances in, which it probably is. I mean, several hours in of driving Mortimer, my ass hurt, really did. So we finished up there, and there was a hotel crew and a camping crew at that point. And so the hotel crew went over to their hotel. They tended usually to have less drama than us. Although I think one of the last hotels they hit was just like, it was a hotel in concept only, very much like those Chinese bicycle tires I bought once, where somebody had encountered a bicycle tire in a dream and then made one. And I think one of the later hotels, I think somebody had like maybe seen one in a dream and not conceptualized how a hotel was supposed to work. But we ended up at a campground called the Triple G Hideaway, which was neat. The buildings were these giant Quonset huts that, likely, knowing the Alaska Highway, were just big repair shops from World War II. And they had these Western-style facades on them. And it's nice, like it was a nice camping area with pine trees, and they gave us a spot so that all of us were sort of together. So we just pulled in a mass of Jeeps. Jim and Kevin had this like big trailer they were towing behind this little CJ2A Jeep that had a box on it which contained the smorgasbord, which is basically whenever they stopped for lunch, a big table came out, and then they just started pulling food out of coolers. And then on top of this box was this massive tent that would just unfold. And my ex and I had the little cot tent, Camprite, I think it was. We had a double one, and I remember this first time we put it up at the Triple G. Jim looks over and just names it the Bear Burrito. So from that point on, we were we had the Bear Burrito. After we set up camp, we're sitting around chatting. We looked over, and you could see this place next to us where it was like, oh, there's some neat old vehicles over there. So we walked over, and the whole bunch of us ended up spending like the next hour and a half just exploring until it was too dark to see, exploring what turns out to be the Fort Nelson History Museum.
Oh.
Which I forgot the name of. The fellow was still alive then who had put the whole place together. It was just rows of vehicles. There was this massive engine. I forget what it was from, but it was like 2 stories tall, and you had to climb scaffolding that was mounted to it to get up to the second level of the engine. Rows of neat antique cars going out into the woods, all sorts of stuff left from the making of the Alaska Highway. I have yet to actually be inside that museum. I follow them on Facebook. At this point, they've when the fellow who founded it passed, I think he left money or they got a grant, one or the other, but they expanded, modernized. So hopefully if 2027 works out, I will be making time to actually see this museum in daylight. Yeah, I think so. I think that's actually a good stopping point
think so.
because from there, we're going to jump back on the road the next round and get ourselves up to Watson Lake. I'll review that and possibly as far as Whitehorse. We'll see. Thank you for bearing with us and listen. And hey, now we're actually on the Alaska Highway. So next episode, part 5. Will be entirely all Alaska Highway all the time with more stuff breaking down. I'm absolutely sure of it. So thank you for listening. And we will be back with you, the next time that we upload and you happen to download. So
Toodles.
Talk to you later.
take care all. Don't fall off the treadmill.